Hello, guys. This is Gregory Bennett. Thank you guys so much for being here. And so I'm going to be talking about wholesaling today, but not just how to wholesale, but whether or not wholesaling is legal. I often get the question, is wholesaling legal? Do you need a real estate license to wholesale real estate? I'm currently in the state of Maryland, and here in the state of Maryland, our state Senate just passed a bill, Bill 301. It says you do need to have a license to wholesale. And so I'm going to go over that, sort of the pros and cons of um, having to have a license to wholesale real estate. I've been wholesaling real estate for over 20 years. And so I'm going to talk about the bill that was just passed. Um, but let me start off with wholesaling and what wholesaling is. And so, as an example, I recently put a property under contract in Washington, D.C. I had sent out some postcards, and my favorite list is out of town absentee owners. And so I sent a list. I purchased a list, sent some postcards out to that list. Lady called me. She had a house that she inherited and wanted me to buy the house. So we went over to the house. I took a look. I made her an offer. And so the house had been vacant for a few years, needed a lot of repairs. I made her a below market offer. I made her an offer of, I believe, 150,000 as an example. Um, Once the house is fixed up, what we call the ARV on the property is 300,000. So I made an offer of 150,000. We went under contract with the purchase and sales agreement. I'm an LLC on the contract. So the principal buyer or purchaser is my LLC. Now, on that LLC, on that contract, it says that I'm the buyer or assigns. So Bennett Properties or assigns is the buyer, which gives me the right to assign the contract. And so I went under contract with her, and then I marketed the contract so that I could get another buyer, what we call a cash buyer, so I could sell the contract to that cash buyer. And so I did market the contract. I did find a cash buyer. We signed a separate agreement, an assignment agreement that stipulated that I recognized that I was under contract with that seller on the purchase and sales agreement, that they would take over all the rights and responsibilities of the purchase contract, and they would do that for a fee. Now, in this case, the fee was $30,000. So they was really buying the house for $80,000. On the assignment agreement, it said that they were taking over the contract of 150,000, and then they would pay me 30,000 for the right to take over the contract. So I assigned the contract to them. We eventually went to settlement, and at the settlement table, my LLC was on the settlement statement, and the title company wired me the $30,000 assignment fee, wholesale fee. Sometimes some wholesalers want to call it a consultant fee, whatever that looks like. And so that's an example of what wholesaling is. Wholesaling is the act of finding a property and putting it under contract below market, and then assigning the contract. We're not selling property when we're wholesaling. We're just assigning the contract to another cash buyer. Now, my intentions were pure. My intentions when I went under contract with the seller was to be the principal buyer and buy the property, but then I decided just to go ahead and assign the contract. So I basically sold the contract. She was very, very happy with the 150,000. House was free and clear. The house needed about, I'll say, $70,000 worth of work. And so she was happy to get her money. She did get her money, and that was it. The cash buyer purchased the property, renovated the property, and sold it for the 300,000, 330. That's wholesaling. That's what wholesaling is. And so across the country, there's lots of wholesalers or / investors that are making a great living, six-figure income living. Some make six figures a month. And upwards over that, just wholesaling real estate. It's a good business practice. Um, Here's the problem. The problem is that there's lots of wholesalers that are doing this, really not knowing what they're doing, using the wrong contracts, the wrong language, and so they're getting, they're reneging on the contracts because they can't find the cash buyers, and so a lot of states, including the state of Maryland, want to regulate wholesaling. And so now what they're saying is, in order to wholesale, you have to have a real estate license, or you can be a wholesaler in the state of Maryland, but you can only do one wholesale deal a year. One wholesale deal a year. Again, the bill passed, the House Bill 301. You can look it up. House Bill 301 did pass. The new wholesale law goes into effect October 1st of this year, 2023. And so I want to go over, I'll go over some of the language in that House bill, but also I want to go over, since we know what wholesaling is now, and there is ways around it, and I'll give you my opinion on that, ways around the new bill. But at the end of the day, my position on this is, unfortunately, since it is regulated now, wholesaling, my position is just get your real estate license. Now, again, there's ways around, and I'll go over 2 or 3 of the ways to continue to wholesale more than one deal a year in the state of Maryland. But you don't want to be the guinea pig. You don't want to be the one that gets fined. I think in one state, the initial fine is $25,000, and then if you do it again, it's upwards of that, and it could even be jail time. You don't want to deal with that. If they're regulating in your jurisdiction, wholesaling and requiring a real estate license, take heed. Many years ago, when I first started in real estate, I started off as an investor. A year out of college, 23 years old, I was buying houses. It wasn't wholesaling. I was buying houses, but and I didn't have a real estate license. I decided to get a real estate license because the real estate agents that I was working with, they just weren't moving fast enough for me. So I said, I'll go ahead and get my real estate license. I did. I started selling real estate. I never had any intentions on selling. I just wanted access to the MLS and learn how to write contracts. But I did start selling real estate and got very good at it, built a big team, and did very well. I own a real estate brokerage now alongside of wholesaling, buying and holding, fixing and flipping. I coach investors as well with Bennett boot camps. But I would recommend, unfortunately, we've got a lot of wholesalers out here, and they're doing a great job. The wholesalers, in my opinion, are the lifeblood of the investing industry, in that because they're the ones that are finding deals. And so investors that are fixing and flipping, investors that are buying and holding, in many cases, they're getting their deals from wholesalers. The wholesalers are the ones that are actually out here doing what I consider the work, the most important part of what goes on in the industry, which is finding deals. Wholesalers are finding deals. They're assigning these contracts to other investors. And so now they are being regulated. And it's just a coincidence that they're the ones that are being regulated, wholesalers, including myself. And we're the ones that are actually out here grinding, finding deals through many ways: postcards, like I mentioned, cold calling, Bennett signs, social media, putting properties under contract at the auction, many different ways. So having said all that, this is what you need to wholesale. Basically, there's 2 contracts. And the first contract, what I call the A to B contract, that's the purchase and sales agreement. That's between the principal seller, the owner of the home, and the principal buyer. In many cases, is the wholesaler, or you. You put the property on the contract. You have to be the principal buyer. Now, again, on our contract, it says "and or assigns," which says that either you're the buyer or whoever you assign the contract to is the buyer. And so you have to have that purchase and sales agreement. All your intentions on that contract need to stipulate that you're going to be purchasing this property. Address needs to be on there. The amount needs to be on there that you're buying the property for. In the scenario, in the case study that I gave, it was $150,000 was on the contract. there needs to be some consideration. So you got to have what we call an earnest money deposit. And in my case, I think my earnest money deposit was $5,000. And so all that makes for a legal contract. And so, or a bilateral contract, which means you've got to have, in this case, a buyer, principal seller. And each party has to do something. They're responsible for something. And so the buyer is putting up some consideration, and they promise to buy. The seller is promising to sell. So you've got a bilateral contract. All your intentions need to be disclosed on that initial contract. You want to buy the house. We put some contingencies in the contract, a financing contingency, inspection contingency. So we put all those in the contract. We also put in our contracts that we have a right to market. Market the property. There's also a paragraph in the contract that what we call in the real estate world an agency paragraph, which primarily says that whether we're a real estate agent or not, we don't represent you. So it's disclosure. And so if you are a real estate agent, you have to disclose. And so we say disclose, disclose, disclose. You've got to disclose in the contract whether it's an off-market deal or the property's in the MLS. If it's an off-market deal, you still have to disclose. And so we have a paragraph in our contract that says whether I'm an agent or not, I don't represent you. If I'm an agent, I disclose that I'm an agent, but I don't represent you. I represent myself. And so we have that in the contract. We do have another paragraph that says we have a right to assign a contract. So we're disclosing to the seller that we have a right to assign the contract if we want to assign the contract. So all those things are in the contract. We do provide proof of funds. We do provide a lender letter if we're not paying cash for the property. In most cases, we do pay cash. And cash can be pure cash or a hard money lender. But we do put in the contract how we're financing the property. Once we put the property under contract and decide to, instead of closing on that deal ourselves, if we decide to assign the contract, now again, as a wholesaler, we're not selling property. As a wholesaler, we're selling a contract. We're assigning a contract. And so if we decide to do that, then we use a second contract that we call an assignment agreement. And so it's a second contract. Now, I talked about the A to B contract. That's the purchase and sales agreement between the principal buyer and the principal seller. The B to C contract is the assignment agreement. B is you, the wholesaler, and C is the cash buyer. And so the B to C contract is the assignment agreement. So we're going to assign the contract, not the property, but the contract. We're assigning the contract to another cash buyer. We're going to disclose to that cash buyer that we're under contract with the A, the motivated seller. We're going to give them a copy of the A to B contract. And then they're going to read through that because they're going to take over that contract, all the rights and responsibilities of that contract. And then they're going to sign our B to C contract, the assignment agreement. Basically, the assignment agreement is going to say that that the wholesaler slash buyer has gone under contract with the motivated seller, and it's going to stipulate the address, and that the C, the cash buyer, is going to take over as the assignee the principal contract, and they're going to take it over for a fee. And then in the case study that I just gave, the fee was $30,000. And so the average wholesale deal in our area, I'm in the Washington, D.C. area, the average wholesale fee is, I'll say, around $20,000. Experienced investors and experienced wholesalers are probably getting around 30 plus per deal. So there's lots of money to be made as a wholesaler. Let's see. I've got some notes here. Consideration. Be transparent. You've got to be transparent with all parties. It's in our purchase and sales agreement twice that we have the right to assign. We disclose to the cash buyer that we do have another contract. We disclose that to them so that they know. We let them see it before they actually sign the assignment agreement. Now, most of the deals that we do are off market deals. And so even though we don't represent the seller, we disclose that we don't represent the seller. If you're an agent, you disclose that you're an agent. We also recommend getting legal counsel. If you want to get legal counsel or get another real estate agent to represent you. And then, they'll have you sign some type of agreement, buyer broker agreement or consulting agreement. And the seller can pay them. And so if they want legal counsel, then they can have legal counsel on these deals. Now, so here's the thing. Having said all that, so everything I just said makes for a legal contract, and it makes wholesaling legal. And so no one can tell me that it's not legal, because we have for sale by owners, and an owner can sell their house without using a real estate agent. And so I think that's number one. There's no requirement for sale by owner, what we call a FSBO, to have a real estate agent. As a matter of fact, real estate agents market to FSBOs in hopes that they don't sell the properties, that they need an agent to then put the property in the MLS with hopes of getting a buyer. And so, and we have contracts that we use for FSBOs. And so I would say if you're looking for loopholes, and again, and I'll mention this, 2 or 3 more times, I do highly recommend just getting your real estate license. And again, the new bill in Maryland, if you're a Maryland wholesaler, allows you to do 1 wholesale deal a year without a license. But with a license, you can do as many wholesale deals as you want. Now, the principal buyer should always be, it shouldn't be you. It shouldn't be you. It shouldn't be your name. It should be an entity. And so many people will say, well, that's how I can get around this new law. If they were to sue, they're going to sue the entity. And so you can wholesale. We've been wholesaling for many years as an LLC. So you can wholesale as an LLC. You can wholesale as a trust. You can, in the LLC, you can put a real estate agent in the LLC, have a multi-member LLC, and that kind of gets around that loophole, wholesaling as an entity or a trust. But again, I highly recommend, since it's so lucrative as a wholesaler, not that difficult to get your license. It's a 60-hour course that most people teach it in, I think it's a 6-week course. Or if you take it online, and I have a link, if you're interested, I have a link that you can take our online course that you can get your license at your leisure. You can have it, and some people have done it in 2 or 3 weeks. You can get your license that way. Now you're completely legal. Now, I want to talk about just a little bit about House Bill 301, which was recently passed in the state of Maryland. And basically, I'm just going to read the bill and just kind of summarize it. But the bill goes like this. It says, this bill requires real estate wholesalers to be licensed as a real estate broker by the Maryland Real Estate Commission. So this is only for wholesaling in the state of Maryland. But there are a few other states that have passed a similar bill. As a result, the statutory definition of provide real estate brokerage services is expanded to include engaging in buying or selling, offering to buy or sell, or marketing of real estate, or otherwise dealing in contracts, including assignable contracts. So that's where they kind of loop in wholesaling, because wholesaling is an assignable contract. again, in our purchase and sales agreement, the A to B contract, it stipulates in there that that contract can be assigned, including assignable contracts for real estate or options on real estate on two or more occasions in any 12-month period, regardless of whether the activity is engaged in for another person. So in a 12-month period, two or more. So it's kind of funny. They allow you to do one. So it's funny that, to me, it's funny that they think it's just not the right thing to do. It's unscrupulous. It's illegal. You're taking advantage of people, but they let you do that one time. And so when I read that, I kind of chuckled. And so as a real estate wholesaler without a license, you can wholesale one time, once a year. Two or more times you've got to have a license. Now, again, some will say, well, it won't be me. I'll just do it. I'm in an LLC or a trust. I will have, again, I didn't mention this, but a double closing. I will close on the deal and then I will sell the property. That's a double closing. Some wholesalers do that anyway. And so double closing is actually fine. I don't like double closings because you've got to pay two sets of closing costs. But what many will do to kind of skirt around this is, and it costs a little more because, again, you've got to close on the A to B contract. You've got to close. So you've got to go through closing costs, transfer and recordation, title fees. Now you own the property. Now you go from being a principal buyer to now you're the principal seller, and then close on it again as the principal seller. That's two different transactions. That's two separate deeds. That's legal. The downside of that is, depending on the price of the property, you're going to have to pay, transfer taxes, transfer and recording taxes. You're going to have to pay title charges and some other miscellaneous fees closing. So it's two transactions. But some people will do that, especially if the wholesale fee is large enough, they'll have a double closing. Or, like I said, they'll close as an LLC, which is an entity or a trust, or even maybe put a real estate agent's name as a multi-member LLC to do the wholesaling. And so I just wanted to spend a little time today just kind of going over that. I highly recommend getting your real estate license. Just go ahead, bite the bullet. I know many of you don't want to or don't think you can, but get your real estate license. That's the easiest solution if you're in the state of Maryland and you want to do more than one wholesale deal. My recommendation is to get your real estate license. I do own a brokerage, Bennett Realty Solutions. We have lots of investors. We're investor friendly. We have a lot of real estate agents that are also wholesalers, and they have their license. And they primarily got their license, like me, to learn more about how to find properties on the MLS and how to sell real estate, how to write contracts, that sort of thing. And so that's what I highly recommend in this very, very lucrative industry that we call wholesaling real estate. And so one thing I want to say to you is the way to build wealth, kind of as a side note, the way to build wealth is not wholesaling. Wholesaling is active income. You wholesale a property and you get paid one time. That's active income. The way to true wealth is to buy and hold. And so use that wholesaling money to then buy and hold residential real estate, Airbnb, multifamily, commercial real estate, whatever that is, that's passive income. And so we want to use the wholesaling money to buy and hold real estate for passive income. And again, just want to just kind of really, really, really reiterate just one last time that state of Maryland just recently passed House Bill 301 which requires wholesalers to have a real estate license. And my take on that is, yeah, you may think that there's some loopholes, and there is, but at the end of the day, I highly recommend that you get your real estate license so that you can do more than, because the bill only calls for one property a year. You can do more than one property and take advantage of, really take advantage of, what's really going on in the industry, because wholesalers provide a need. They provide a need. Um, there's been lots of houses that we've been able to save people from going to foreclosure because we were able to put them under contract and help them make money. We buy properties from personal representatives of estates who need to sell properties fast. And so we're able to put those properties under contract and then assign those contracts to cash buyers. We go to auctions. Wholesalers go to auctions and put properties under contracts. Wholesalers provide a need for our industry, for our economy. And then we assign those contracts to cash buyers and we close pretty quickly. In most cases, a wholesale deal, title work generally takes about a week, can close in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And so we provide a need for a lot of people. And so there is a need for wholesalers. State of Maryland wants to regulate it. Let's just go along with it. Let's just get our license. All right, you guys, I don't see any questions, so I will end this. If you do have any questions, you can always go to my Instagram, Greg Bennett Invest. You can go to my YouTube and let me know what you think about this new House bill in the state of Maryland. My YouTube is Gregory Bennett. And if you have any other questions, just let me know. All right, you guys, take care. God bless. Have a great day.